I've been looking forward to this. The right to information law is one that was so highly anticipated, especially by those of us in our field, but also by all Ghanaians who want to be able to be part of the accountability structures of our country. And of course, in January 2020, finally, it became an operationalized law when the commission started its work. And of course, since then, goodness, they've had a lot of work to do, which means that the law is being actively applied in everyday life. So let's learn a little bit about what's been happening so far. As I mentioned, Stephen Owusu and Elizabeth Asare are here with us. Elizabeth is the deputy chair of the governing board, and Stephen is the head of legal, governance, regulatory and research. Sounds like a very busy portfolio. So I mean, let's start with the story so far. I mean, since January, when this law, the implementation of this law began, what's been the story for the Right to Information Commission?
Well, the story has been a very busy commission. We were sworn into office in October, and then we had to get the office set up and running, and with very little money. We were able to get an office. We were able to get a core of staff that we started with. I think we started with about 30. In all, we need about 436. Currently, we have 120. And so that's how it started. And from get-go, we started getting requests for information from people who had been denied by the institution. And I think that when it comes to numbers, Steve will be the best person to tell you, because his office has been very busy, and the decisions that we have given that have sat well with people, others we have given that don't sit well with people. There are some institutions that are public institutions as defined by the Act who have said that they're not public institutions, and so there's a going back and forth. But indeed, like you're saying, people have begun to apply the law, and therefore we get requests from time to time, and we are kept on our toes.
Yeah, no doubt. Maybe we can talk about some of these numbers. It's been what 3.5 years? A little over 3.5 years.
No, 3 years in October.
Oh, it will be 3 years in October.
Yes.
Oh, of course.
When the commission came into existence.
Yes, October 2020. So, okay, yeah, you're right. So we're almost at 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk us through some numbers.
Okay, so within the first year of implementation of the law, we had about 24 applications coming to the commission. And
to clarify, when an application comes to the commission, that means someone has applied for information from an institution and has been denied.
Yes.
So it is sort of complaints
yes,
that
complaints,
come to you.
complaints.
Yes.
So
Okay.
by
Okay.
applications, I mean complaints
Okay.
lodged with the commission by applicants, as you said, who have been to institutions to request for information and were not satisfied with the responses they got. So within the first year, we had 24 complaints. And last year, so that was 2021. Last year, it jumped from 24 to about 87. That was a quantum leap. And for 2023, looking at the numbers we've been dealing with, we are very sure to exceed last year's number of 87. Wow. Yes.
Okay. So, do you find regular offenders? Are there some institutions that are coming up in these complaints more than others?
Yes. So, by way of administrative penalties we've been imposing on institutions that have failed to live up to their obligations under the law, I can mention Ghana Police Service.
Wow.
Okay, yes, Ghana Police Service.
It's not a surprise. I suppose.
Of course, they deal with the public on regular basis. So Ghana Police Service, I believe, has received about 3 or 4 administrative penalties.
Do they pay?
We are in court. We are in court against Ghana Police Service and other institutions to try to recover the administrative penalties imposed. But some of the institutions have made good their indebtedness. Okay, and those who have failed to pay, we are in court, and we are still in the process of filing cases against some of those institutions.
How much is that typical administrative fine?
Okay, so the Act gives the commissioner discretion.
Right.
Okay, so we take into account the circumstances of the case. Okay, the circumstances of the case. There's a case in court with ADB, but I'll still use it as an example. Okay, ADB's case had a checkered history. Okay, back and forth. Okay, even when the commission had made it clear that ADB were a public institution, they so insisted they were not a public institution. Eventually, we came out with a decision. So we took all that into account in imposing the administrative penalty we imposed on ADB. And they took the commission to court, and we've gone beyond the High Court. I think they've gone to the Court for Appeal. So when the courts resume, no, the courts are on break now. So when the courts resume, I believe we'll be at the Court for Appeal.
How much is the penalty?
For ADB, it was 300,000 Ghana cedis.
Okay.
Okay, but that has been the highest.
Okay.
As I
So
said,
far?
yes, we take into account.
It's a case.
We deal with it on a case by case basis. Okay, there are some institutions that have been slapped with administrative penalties of 20,000, others 30,000, others 50,000. So we take into account. Okay, and as you did indicate, we also take into account the regularity of infringing on obligations under the law. We also take that into account.
Are these punitive enough? I mean, 20, 30, 50, even 300,000. Is it punitive enough for an institution to sit up and actually start complying with the law?
I think that for a beginning, it should be punitive enough. We don't want to start with a case where your penalties are so high that people are not able to pay, and therefore would flout the law because they think that there's no way that they can pay the penalties that you're charging. Again, we should remember that these are public institutions, most of them funded by government. And so we need to keep them on their toes. So we need to let them understand and appreciate the law first. And that's what we're doing. There's a lot of sensitization and awareness creation. When we go beyond that, when people continually flout the law, then we'll know that it is deliberate. And then we can put up the penalties.
So the police, I mean, they seem to have had...
Let me add a bit to what Mrs. Ansari has said. We are also very careful not to allow institutions that have the financial muscle, to have their way, because once they are bent on not giving the information, if the administrative penalty is not punitive enough, it will just be a matter of paying and still refusing to give the information. After all, this is how much they are going to impose on us. We will pay. So we take all this into account in imposing.
So that's where the discretion comes in.
Yes.
Right. So I'm interested in the police. I mean, they are in court on about 3 or 4 different counts, if you will, of not complying by the law. How much are they, being asked to pay?
So for the police, I think it's been 50,000 Ghana cedis on each of the occasions we have had to impose administrative penalty on them, and we are trying to recover those monies.
When they take you to court, that becomes a cost.
We took them to court.
When you take them to court,
yes,
sorry, thank you for that.
For ADB, they took us to court.
Okay, so I mean, when you go to court,
yes,
it becomes a cost for you as well.
Exactly.
Legal costs.
Yes.
Are you properly funded to deal with all of these? Let's talk honestly, because we need you guys to be able to do your job. So talk to us honestly.
Our funding does not only come from Parliament. We're an independent body, so Parliament approves our budget. But then we have been given the leeway so we can raise funds from donations, from grants, and then administrative penalties is another way of us getting funding. So far so good. It's been a struggle, it's been difficult, but I think that we are trotting on. Gradually people will begin to appreciate what we do, and we believe that when they do, they'll be willing to support us.
I mean, is the message here that you guys have all the money you need? You're okay?
No.
Certainly,
Alright.
certainly
I
not.
said so.
Certainly not, Kojo.
So,
No, but as Mrs. Asari said, you go under Section 60. It gives these three sources of funding for the commission. But is an important factor is that under the Act we are independent.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are also looking very much to getting support, okay, donations, because that is also one of the sources of funding aside administrative penalty and then budgetary allocation through Parliament. We are hoping to get as much funding from individuals and institutions as possible, so that we wouldn't have to rely solely on government, and just so that we can maintain the independence the Act has given us.
Yeah. I mean, how big is the funding gap? I recall you mentioning that you need over 300 staff.
Yeah.
Currently, you're just at
120.
120 odd. So, even with employment, there's a gap there before we then come to administrative costs and legal costs and all of that. How big is the funding gap at the moment?
the funding gap, let me say, is huge, because we need to have a presence in every region and, if possible, in every district, so that it becomes easy for people to seek information. Right now, a lot of people who are outside of Accra are contacting us on social media and via emails, and that's how we are reaching out to them, so they don't have to travel from where they are to Accra to be able to access us. They can access us online, but it will take a lot. We need to establish offices. That alone is capital intensive. But let me say that even though we are cash strapped and even though we do not have all the resources, our offices would open in Kumasi and Sunyani, hopefully before the end of the year.
In fact, we are starting operations from 9th of next month.
Wow.
Okay.
Yes.
Kumasi and
Sunyani.
Nice.
The regional coordinating councils have been magnanimous enough to grant us spaces. We've actually sent letters to all the 16 regions, trying to get spaces to set up offices. And as a backup to that, if we are not able to get offices, the backup is for us to look for rental spaces to set up offices. And as Mrs. Harry said, that also comes with cost.
And to think that we have 120 in Accra and we do not have a full staff, we have to send some of the 120 to Kumasi and to Sunyani to start the offices there. So then the numbers in Accra will reduce. But we need to work, so we need to be able to manage. So you probably have him heading, he's supposed to be legal, but they've added on to what he does because we do not have
governance,
requisite
regulatory
staff.
research. Yeah. All right. Well, if you just joined us, we're talking to Elizabeth Asari, Deputy Chairperson of the Governing Board of the RTI Commission. She's here with Stephen Owusu, who is Head of Legal, Governance, Regulatory and Research for the Commission. And we're learning about how they're doing their work since the law became operational back in 2020. So, who tends? Oh, actually, let's take a couple of messages from our partners. When we come back, we'll find out a bit more about your customers. Who tends to be the heaviest user of the commission? Is it members of the public? Is it the media? Is it civil society? And then we'll also start looking into the future to see what comes next for the RTI commissions. But listen, while we have you, let's get some education. First of all, who would you say tend to be your largest customer group? Is it journalists or civil society or members of the public?
Okay, so within the first year of implementation, I think journalists. Journalists primarily. We received a lot of applications from the Fourth Estate.
Oh yes,
of the Media Foundation for West Africa.
Yeah.
Yes. So Evans Aziamo Mensa Kwaku Krobi Asante, they really patronized the law. Going forward, civil society organizations also started using the law, and I have to mention the Center for Democratic Empowerment. Okay, they have also really made use of the law, and it is encouraging that aside these two groups, individuals are also using the law, and we've been receiving applications even from the regions.
Good.
Okay, and these are people who have used the law to apply for information in those regions and were not satisfied and have had to resort to the commission for redress. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, I think another aspect of this that people are not very well educated on is the kinds of information that they can request. And there are so many examples. I get people asking me sometimes, so someone has applied for a job at a public institution. He's been told that the vacancy has been filled. He wants to know how many people applied for the job. Is that the kind of information that you can request under RTI?
Yes, the person is entitled to ask for that kind of information. But let me answer the question also this way. You go under the Right to Information Act, 2019, Act 989. So the moment you hear Act 989, it talks about the Right to Information Act. Under the law, from sections 5 to 16, are outlined categories of information that the law itself describes as exempt.
Right.
Exempt from disclosure, meaning those categories of information cannot be given out. Kojo, I think we would need another time for me to go through. But I'll touch on one or two as example. Okay, so you go under section 5, for instance. It talks about information prepared for the advice, the consideration, the deliberation of the president or the vice president, and where disclosing such information has the potential to prejudice the deliberative process ongoing or even the national security. Okay, such information is exempt. So you should listen to the language very well. It's not just that the information has been prepared to be submitted to the president or vice president for advice, for deliberation, and so it is exempt. It is when the disclosure of such information has the potential to prejudice whatever deliberations will be going on or to affect the security of the state, then it is exempt. But even with that, the law turns around to say that but if it is statistical or factual information, then it is not exempt. It's not exempt. So that's an example of one of the classes of exempt information. But let me add another example. Information that relates to law enforcement, okay, and the security of the state. Okay, this information is also exempt. So normally the police would take cover under that provision, information that relates to law enforcement. So let me give you an example. Let's say there has been a robbery incident, okay, around this area. The police have come in, okay, they are doing their investigations. They mounted a swoop, picked some people up. Investigations are ongoing. Okay, at that point in time, should Kojo be able to apply to the police to say, look, okay, I'm coming under the Right to Information Act. Okay, one, I want you to tell me the number of people you've picked up. I want you to tell me what you have gathered so far from your investigation. Is it fair for such information to be given to you whilst investigations are ongoing? No, that is information that relates to law enforcement. In any case, going by this example, once the police are done with their investigations, people they feel should be put before court will be put before court. It becomes public. Okay, but at the point in time when they are investigating, it is information that relates to law enforcement. It is exempt. The law says it's exempt. It cannot be given. Personal information, for instance, you go under section 16. Okay, the law says that information is exempt from disclosure where the information pertains to the personal affairs, okay, of an individual, okay, and where the disclosure is unreasonable. So who determines reasonability? The law itself helps us to gauge which disclosure is reasonable and which is not reasonable.
Right.
So the same section 16 will tell you that disclosure is unreasonable where it will reveal something about the person's physical or mental health, where it will reveal trade secret. Okay, then the disclosure is unreasonable. That is just an example given under the law.
Right.
But the law turns around to say that, but disclosure is reasonable, even if it is somebody's personal information, where one, the disclosure is being made to the owner of the information. So, Kojo, it is your own information.
Right.
You have applied for your own information. Okay, this disclosure is reasonable because it is your personal information.
Yeah.
Okay, it may be information that pertains to a person's health. Okay, all right, but the law says that where the disclosure is to help promote public health, then the disclosure is reasonable. Okay, so assuming somebody returns from Brazil with a strange strain of COVID, okay, it is the person's health we are talking about here. So under normal circumstance, okay, it shouldn't be disclosed. But so if I apply, it may not be given to me. But if Ghana Health Service should apply for information, okay, they have the mandate to protect our health. Okay, so such information can be given to Ghana Health Service, for instance. So you see, to me, it is exempt. But to Ghana Health Service, it's not exempt. Okay, so these are just few examples.
Interesting.
And so coming back to your question about the interviewees who were and who was taken, he talked about data.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to data, you can receive. But when it comes to wanting to know by name who applied and things like that, I think that is exempt because you're going into people's personal information.
Yes.
But then when you go also and you're applying for the data, it should be data that does not come under the data protection law. I mean, that is allowed under the data protection law, because if it violates the data protection law, then definitely.
Yeah, that makes a very important clarification. All right, so let's get an idea of the process. So I've applied for some information from an institution. They have either not responded, or they are telling me that it's an unreasonable request, or that the information is exempt. I disagree. So I want the commission to step in. What's the process? How do I do that?
You mean after the institution you went to has denied?
Yes.
Okay, then you apply to the commission to make your complaint, and then the commission would investigate. And if the information you request is not exempt, then the commission will give a directive to the institution to give you the information. What we've realized is that sometimes when it's not exempt and you give the institution the directive to give the information, they're not willing to, so they probably would hold on for a long time. What we are looking at doing now is saying to the institution that if they supply the information to the applicant who requested the information in the beginning, they should also apply to us, and then we will publish it, because we have said that information disclosed to one person is information disclosed to all.
That's actually a very good policy there.
Okay, let me come in here. I think it's also very important for your listeners to understand how they can even apply under the law.
Yeah.
So you go under section 18. It lays out the application process. So if somebody wants information from any public institution, what do they have to do? Section 18 says that the person must apply in writing. So the application must be in writing, and in the application, the person has to describe the information they are looking for, so
Right.
that it can be found for them. Then in the same application, the person must indicate the manner of access. So do you want it in print, in photocopy, in scan? Do you want to be invited to come and inspect? So you must indicate the manner of access you are looking for, and then the person must, of course, indicate their name and the address, just so that the public institution can communicate with the person, and then the person must sign or thumbprint, okay, and then add proof of identification. So it could be your Ghana card, your passport. But then if the person is applying on behalf of another person, then there's the added responsibility for the person to indicate the capacity in which he or she makes the application on behalf of the other person. But let me add that, when the law says that application must be in writing, it also does not mean that the law has excluded those of us who cannot perhaps read or write. Okay, so the law says under section 18.2 that where an applicant is unable to write, either by reason of disability or illiteracy, they can walk to the public institution, okay, and make the application orally. Now, there's a responsibility under the law for every public institution to have an officer called the information officer. Okay, so we have been going around monitoring compliance, and when we come, the first thing we ask for is your information unit headed by an information officer, because it's a requirement under the law.
Yeah.
So when the applicant who cannot write goes to the public institution, it is the responsibility of this information officer, whose duty it is to receive applications on behalf of the public institution and take steps to process the application, to listen to the oral application, and then reduce it into writing. And after having done that, to read over to the applicant and explain in a language the applicant understands. And so that the applicant can confirm that this is what I asked for. And then the applicant will be made to either sign or thumbprint, and a copy will be given to the applicant. But then the law goes on also to say that if the inability to write is as a result of illiteracy, then the applicant must go with a witness. Okay, so that the witness will also endorse on the face of the oral application, taking down in writing by the information officer, that I was there when Asumesi came to make the oral application, and it was reduced into writing, and afterwards it was read over and explained in a language as soon as we understood, and as soon as he appeared to have understood before signing or thumbprint. We lawyers call this a jurat.
Right.
Okay, so that is the application process. But then the law says that, okay, so after this application, what happens? Under section 23, the information officer has 14 days within which to take a decision on the application and serve a notice on the applicant. So the decision can be one of three things. Either after looking at your application, we think you are entitled to the information, the notice will indicate so. And if that is the decision, the notice will indicate the fee you have to pay and then when you can come and pay and then get the information. But all should be done within the 14 days. Or the decision may be that after examining your application, we think you are not entitled because the information is exempt. But the law says that where the decision is that the information is exempt and so it cannot be given out, the information officer has to give a reason for the denial. And the reason can be based on one of the exemptions only. Okay, because if it is not exempt, it must go out.
Exactly.
Okay, and then the decision may also be that after examining your application, we think that you are entitled to part of the information. Okay, but the law says that a reason must be given for denying the other part.
Okay.
Now, when the applicant gets this decision notice, the applicant may be satisfied or dissatisfied. Okay, if the applicant is dissatisfied, the law says that the applicant has to trigger an internal review with the head of the institution.
Right.
The first decision is by the information officer. So the applicant has 30 days within which to apply to the head of the institution for an internal review, to review the information officer's decision. The head of the institution has 15 days after receipt of the application for internal review, in which to make a decision.
Right.
And then
so first it's 14 days.
14 days.
Then 15 days.
15 days.
Okay.
Okay, but after the 14 days, the applicant has 30 days
30
within
days,
which to make the internal review
That's right.
application.
Okay.
And then, in some instances, the head of the institution may not even respond to the application. The law says that when it happens that way, it is deemed that the head of the institution has affirmed the decision of the information officer. And that will mean that the applicant is still dissatisfied. And that is where the applicant now comes to the Right to Information Commission.
Okay.
And the process Mrs. Asari described will be used by the commission to address the issue. And there is even a way above the commission. When the commission also gives a decision and the applicant is still dissatisfied or a party is dissatisfied, they can go to the High Court under Section 36 for judicial review. So that is the application process.
Okay. We're just about to wrap things up with our guests, Stephen Owusu and Elizabeth Asare from the RTI Commission. So, just before the break, I was asking if you could walk us through a real-life case. And I know that there is one in particular. I think Multimedia Group has asked for some information from the Ghana Airport Company about the company that has been doing the COVID testing.
Frontiers?
Yes, Frontiers.
Health Services.
Walk us through that one real quick.
Okay, so we received the complaint from Multimedia that they lodged an application for information about the contract with Frontiers, and they did not receive the desired response. So they came to the commission. Now, the process at the commission is that in tune with natural justice. Okay, we have to listen to the other side. So we always write to the public institution, okay, referring them to the application we have received and asking them for the reason for denying the application. Now, the response we got was that the information the applicant asked for is exempt. Okay, so we did a further correspondence and said that, okay, furnish us with the information, because we have the powers under the Act to request for any information from any public institution for purposes of examining to ascertain if it is exempt or not. So furnish us with the information. They furnished us with the information, and we went through the books submitted to us, and we were of the view that no part of the information submitted to us was exempt from disclosure. So we made an order. We gave a directive that after examining the information, we do not think it is exempt. So release the information to the applicant. Okay. Some time went by, they were not complying. Okay, so we received further correspondence from Multimedia, okay, drawing their attention to the fact that Ghana Airport has still not complied with your directive. So we wrote back to them, okay, and then they wrote back to us telling us that they were trying to get some direction from the Minister for Transport. So we wrote to them that so far as the commission is concerned, so far as the right to information law is concerned, okay, we have made the directive and you have to comply. We have nothing to do with the Minister for Transport. We do not take orders from the Minister for Transport. Okay, and then we reinforce our directive for the information to be given to the applicant, and they go back to us, one, asking for time within which to give the information to the applicant, and also asking for a waiver of the administrative penalty of 200,000 Ghana cedis we put on Ghana Airport Company. And we've responded telling them that, one, your behavior, so we chronicled the behavior of Ghana Airport, okay, and told them that your behavior gives a clear indication of your inertia, okay, to give the information. So based on that, we cannot waive the administrative penalty. And now, for time to give the information is readily available. That was why we were able to submit it to the commission. So give it out.
Yeah, wow. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Thank you for that. Just before you go, just in the last few seconds before you go, Elizabeth, tell us about why tomorrow is important.
Okay, the UN has declared September 28th of every year as the International Day for the Universal Access to Information. And this is mainly to let everybody understand that they have the right to information. They have the right to access information. It is a human right that everybody must respect, and therefore it's something that every institution should be willing to accept. It gives for transparency and accountability of the public institutions, and it helps the individuals of the nations to make informed choices, because then they have the right information. to make informed choices.
So I suppose I can suggest to all of us that tomorrow we do what we can to learn as much as we can about the RTI law here in Ghana and how it affects us.
Yes, and this year's theme is importance of the online space for access to information. The actual program, the international program, is taking place in UK, Oxford.
Right.
Okay, but here in Ghana, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, in conjunction with the Right to Information Coalition, okay, is organizing a webinar, okay, on the theme. Okay, so people can find a link on the website of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative and join in.
That's wonderful. I want to say a big thank you to Stephen Owusu. He's the head of legal, governance, regulatory and research at the RTI Commission, and Elizabeth Asari, who's the deputy chairperson of the governing board. Thank you both so much.